I don't think it really matters what order we do these in.
Probably not.
So, this will be another victory for Finding Dory over the weekend, I think.
Yeah.
So, we're going to go ahead and start with The Purge. Election Year. Is that the subtitle?
That is correct.
Right.
Very topical, obviously.
So, this is kind of the first one that's like a real, well, as if it's a big thing, there's only 3 of them, but this is the first one that's kind of an actual direct sequel. We've had Edwin Hodge, I think it's the actor's name, who plays the Stranger. He gets a name in this one, but and I couldn't remember. My memory of Anarchy is so vague now. I can't really. I'm not quite positive on everything we learned from that movie and what we're learning from this one, or what we knew before. We'll get there. Yeah, this is the first one that's kind of a direct sequel because in Anarchy we pretty much followed Frank Grillo's character, and we basically pick up where he is. What this is supposed to be, I guess, in actual time, 2 years later. And now he is protecting Elizabeth Mitchell, who is the senator that wants to run for president, and hopefully, should she win, wants to do away with the Purge entirely because of the prologue, where we get her backstory, where she's basically inside a Rob Zombie movie.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, honestly.
And that's, there's a couple of Rob Zombie movies that I like a lot, but this was kind of, it was kind of like she was in his Halloween territory. A little less House of a Thousand Corpses and more, yeah. And then we get this whole setup. This is also part of the prologue, apparently, about how the Founding Fathers specifically want to go after Elizabeth Mitchell because of the whole she wants to stop the Purge thing. And we are treated to this scene where they're just these... I mean, I know it's always kind of been this thing, and it's supposed to be like this... I don't know. I guess they're going for over-the-top satire, but... the portrayal of them is just... They're so laughably evil. And the reason I think this is a problem and not part of the satire is that I think we're supposed to truly believe that they're real evil, threatening people. And it's very much... Every decision they make is going to keep us on the edge of our seat because they're just so out of their minds and crazy. And they say fucking cocksucker, so we know they mean business.
Yeah, it was in like the first 2 minutes of the movie.
Well, that's basically the whole script's idea, is that if you say cocksucker, you're the most hardcore person on earth. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You are a scary, threatening person if you say fuck randomly or cocksucker. That's the idea. That's when you know a character's really, really somebody that you don't want around. Somebody that makes you fear for your life or whatever the fuck. It doesn't matter. What I guess I'm trying to say is I think this movie might be trying just a little too hard. I think that's kind of the basic gist of what the first 5 or 10 minutes told us. And then the rest of the movie just kind of proved along the way. And once again, with the whole thing, it's... like, right after this whole opening, where everything's all, gruesome, and, things are gonna get real bad, or real dangerous, or whatever, we have this moment when Elizabeth Mitchell is giving this speech about how she wants to take down the Purge, and everything it stands for, and she gets, like, the real... I mean, we get, who's on whose side, and we get that she's kind of hopefully a savior here. But that inspirational music they started playing during her speech at the debate was... I don't know. This, needless to say, you kind of know from the get-go whether or not a movie has you in a good way. And I just kind of wasn't feeling that. And this is definitely the kind of movie where if you're going to be into it, you've got to be into it from the word go. Otherwise, you're going to be a lost cause. And of course, I have the apparently unpopular opinion that these movies are getting progressively worse. I do totally understand where people are coming from, though, about how the first movie, which I prefer to the other two, was a complete and total waste of opportunity because they set up the whole concept and then it was just a home invasion movie.
Right.
Like, almost the entire thing is set inside Ethan Hawke's house. And then Anarchy, and then now this one, we go outside and we see just how much it expands and how the ideas grow from this one concept. Which I do like. These are the stuff where we get to expand on the ideas and the concept are where these movies shine. And they introduce a lot of the first one just kind of sets up the concept, and then Anarchy showed us exactly what all goes down when you're not behind your closed up security systems during the Purge, and then it had expanded on ideas also and had a lot of really nice imagery to go along with it. And this one continues on with that, and really has some interesting ideas and expands, like what did they call it? They had a term for it. It's when people who aren't, because the Purge is strictly an American thing.
Mm-hmm.
People come in from other countries wanting to participate.
Murder holidays.
Yeah, it was. God damn, I had it right here in my head. It was. Tourism was in the term, but
Murder tourism.
Is that okay? That's what it
was.
Well, that was. It's very self-explanatory, I guess. It
Right.
should not be that hard to remember. And yes, that does. And we really, really. I love the imagery that these movies really put on with showing just how chaotic and apocalyptic the Purge is. Like the image of the three people strapped to the car hood with the eyes wide shut guys swinging shit. And those schoolgirls that have the cars with the Christmas lights on them,
Mm-hmm.
where you could just kind of see them from a mile away, and just the image of the darkness and the carnage around them with this kind of approaching, knowing that the danger is only going to increase. This stuff really, really works.
Oh, yeah.
However, then the characters start opening their mouths. And all the bad shit breaks through.
So if this was a silent film, you'd probably love this movie.
Well, I'm sure there are ways that are not through this dialogue
No.
to make this movie better. You have all the right parts. It's just those other gears here are not doing their job to make a greater product overall. Like I said, the whole how do you make a character hardcore, how do you make a character threatening, don't really do much. Just cover them in blood, make them say cocksucker a lot, give them a weapon. Voila, a scary person. Not to mention the fact that the whole idea... This is another one of those cases where I don't know if the movie's doing the shit on purpose. The whole idea that this vendetta with this schoolgirl and Michael T. Williamson stems from the fact that she tried to shoplift a candy bar from his convenience store.
Yep.
And she gets caught and has to give it back. So when she comes back on Purge night with her tricked out car and all of her friends and all of her weapons after she's murdered her parents, is what she tells us, she's ready to break in, kill him, everybody he knows, and burn the place down. Yeah, because she wants her candy bar. I have no idea if the movie is obviously, at some point in here, there clearly has to be an intentional ridiculousness. But when you can't locate it, like what they think is this really crazy idea, and what they think is totally completely ridiculous and they're just having fun with, that's a problem. Because when the guy that writes, if they just say fuck randomly, that makes them awesome and threatening and hardcore. I could see him in his little pitch room You know, it's good because the writer-director is the same guy through the whole trilogy.
Yep.
I could see him talking to Universal and saying, like, get this. Imagine how fucking crazy and awesome this is. The girl is insane. The girl wants to tear him apart and burn down everything he has and just completely bring this place down with this really, really psychotic behavior. But it's just because she wants a candy bar. Isn't that so crazy? It's actually kind of awesome. Not really.
No.
Like I said, I can't tell if that's him or if he's saying, I'm just gonna think of the most ridiculous possible reason for this girl to be pissed off. That could be it too, but the fact that I can't tell the difference is a kind of a problem. Maybe somebody else can tell the difference, but I can't. And going on that, let's just say the idea is, let's just go as ridiculous as possible. Well-intended ridiculousness does not stop it from still being ridiculous, believe it or not.
Right.
And there's this, especially in this kind of area where they want to, obviously, with the, please, for the love of God, don't tell me anybody that has reviewed this movie has used the word undertones. Just say the message they're trying to put out there with the politics and all that stuff. And because obviously it's already this whole thing about modern society. But now, with it being this year, and obviously the title, and the setup, we got political stuff out the asshole here. That's, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if they think they're being subtle, I would certainly hope not, but, you know. I mean, sure, if your idea is if the whole idea is to not be subtle, then fine, do whatever you're gonna do. Go ahead, it's your movie. But it's clear with all that stuff, they're trying to ground this in some kind of realism. Because they're trying to make it this whole, it's a very topical thing.
Right.
Michael T. Williams' constant race dialogue. Throw that in there, too. And so, yeah, that kind of, I mean, it does get very over the top, obviously. But even there's a giant guillotine in this movie at some point.
That's a good visual, but they wasted it.
But like I was saying, though, I can't tell if they're trying to go as over the top as possible or ground themselves in realism either. I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, and there are some cases also where it's just, there are just things in there that don't need to be in there. It's a scary concept in itself, especially since they're trying to ground it in some reality and basically say this is totally what society could be, and kind of already is, just without the whole it's an actual thing that's been passed. But I don't really think this movie needs jump scares. I mean, I get in some cases, like the clowns pretending to be dead.
Right.
Like in that case, fine. But I mean, when the Purge is, I think this happened in Anarchy too. I'm feeling deja vu with this criticism. But when the Purge is not happening yet, when people are just walking the sidewalks normally, there's already kind of a tension building. Not as much tension as in the other movies because we don't really get to see much of what's going down prior to the Purge. The most we get is like 2 days before. And then suddenly we cut and it's like 12 minutes and the alarm's going off. There's not that dread-inducing build-up to all the shit that's about to go down in mere minutes when it goes down. It's all just, we just kind of skip right there. I feel like there's enough tension to where already established to where we don't need literally dudes in Halloween masks popping out and saying boo. I don't think we need that.
It is strange.
And then there's stuff that's just dumb. The pendulum. When Frank Grillo and Elizabeth Mitchell are walking, and then he sets a trap, and he realizes what's happening, and they just narrowly miss a pendulum. And it becomes this thing of, oh man, how do we get past this? Because it's not slowing down. It just swings at a constant rate once it's started, apparently. I don't know how this fucking thing's rigged, but this is just what it does. And you hear the dudes that set it up, like, in the background saying, like, oh, shit, it didn't work. And I'm sure they had other if they set up this pendulum, I'm sure they have other means of killing these people if they just fucking come out. But anyway, the dopiness of this scene comes from, it becomes like a video game where it's like, we gotta wait for the pendulum so we can cross at just the right time. And they make it this whole thing where it's like, okay, you ready? Okay, and then they just do it this big thing like, oh my god, they barely miss it. But we get a farther away shot once they've done this whole thing, this big suspenseful scene where they wait for the pendulum at just the right time and then they go right through it just before it cuts them. But this shot that's backed up right afterwards shows us there's like this much room between the pendulum and the ground. They could have just fucking crawled through and would have been in no danger whatsoever. But we had to have this big suspenseful moment where they wait to make sure they can cross at just the right time before it gets them. What the fuck was that there for?
You hear them in the background when they were talking. It's like, yeah, good luck out there. Just...
Here's an idea. Come out and push them into the pendulum. Or better yet, like I said, if you're equipped with a pendulum that's the size of, like... They can do this whole thing? Like you're Vincent Price or some shit? I'm sure you got something else laying around you can just fucking stab them with. It's like, oh, I just see them like standing around in a garage like, oh man, I want to purge tonight. But the only thing I have to use is this big ass pendulum. It's the only thing I've got.
Why do you have this? Where does the guillotine come from? Are they doing like summer stock or something and it's from a play? Is that where they have this stuff?
I don't know. Maybe they build it in the winter and they're like,
they have medieval weapons just chilling out somewhere in a bunker somewhere?
It's how they spend their Christmas.
Yes.
They're like, I can't wait for the Purge to get around, man.
We wait
this
all
is gonna
year.
Fuck so many people up.
God.
I can't wait. And then they're just happy people, just in bed every night, just happy people. And it's like, man, when the Purge gets here, I'm gonna get to use my giant-ass guillotine and my big-ass pendulum. I can't wait.
That's one way to look at it.
My God.
Well,
that brings in the whole debate, though, from the very first movie about the whole how does the Purge really work, though? Because if you're psychotic enough to go out on Purge night and purge,
what's stopping you from other nights?
Yeah,
I'm going to incarcerate you if you kill someone another day.
It's like if you're psychotic enough to where you're like going, man, I'm gonna get a big ass pendulum that I'm gonna get to use on
back
Purge
to
night.
The pit and the pendulum.
Only 8 months away. Oh man, I can't wait. It's like, that dude's gonna go out and kill people.
He just typed in, gonna get my Poe on, #Purge.
Oh god.
Come on, you can imagine this stuff.
Okay.
I don't know what social media is like on Purge night.
I was thinking one of them. Did Anarchy not go into that?
I think it might have. Like, maybe it's like a split second.
Well, I heard they keep teasing going into prequel territory.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do now. Technically, you could do another one, but I don't think they will.
But the main thing here, though, is that there's some really good ideas in here.
Oh, yeah.
It's just really, really sad that the rest of the script is apparently written by some edgy teenager. Excuse me. And it just really, really brings down any kind of, really good stuff we might have in here. And like I said, there seems to be a lot of confusion. And I kind of want to just kind of have that. I don't know. There are things in here that just make me really, really want to like the movie.
Like the skinhead mercenaries that have the fight with the Crips at the end.
When he was pulling his mask off, there was a split second before we got a full shot of his face where I thought he was Dolph Lundgren.
I thought it was like Michael Rooker on roids.
Oh man, Michael Rooker in one of these movies would be cool.
Yeah, that would have been amazing.
So, yeah, I like if the characters just didn't talk in this movie.
See, like I said, if it was a silent movie,
and another thing is that we don't really seem to expand too much. I feel like we should be following. Like I know you don't want to overcrowd it. I do get that. But I feel like we should be following at least a few more people. Because we have Frank Grillo, who we already know, and we
Mhm.
got the whole senator thing. And then that kind of sets it up to where we could really be following anybody else. But let's follow the owner of a convenience store. And now I get it, because he's like the representation, because
Yeah. He's the everyman.
He's the, the little guy that's just doing everything he can, and then, of course, the government screws him over and says, oh, by the way, you gotta pay us like twice what you normally do, or you're not gonna have Purge insurance, and your shop's just gonna get fucked, and you can't do anything about it. And so he stays behind. He's like, well, I'm gonna protect the shop. And it's like, that's great and all. This feels more like a character that we'd check up on while we're checking out, like, 4 or 5 other different sets of people. Not necessarily most of the movie.
Would you like more about the triage vans, like helping people?
That's another thing they kind of really... were those in Anarchy? I don't remember.
I think they might have been, with like Discount Pam Grier.
But... and then sometimes characters are introduced, like the guy that they had, that they were fixing up.
Right.
How he's just kind of... We just kind of cut, and then they're fixing him, and then suddenly he's kind of in this. I mean,
they handcuff him so he can't do anything.
I don't know. It just seems like a lot. There's still a lot of...
The lady that killed her husband, she's like, I thought it would make it better, and it didn't. It didn't make it better at all. Not like they told us it would.
Which we hear very, very briefly just as a scene cuts, and we never see anything about that again.
Some of the awesome makeups and the masks they use, they kind of
Yeah, that's another thing
didn't
too.
really do enough with them.
Yeah, some of the really good stuff, like the tourists.
Yes.
With the Uncle Sam get up and the Statue of Liberty
That was cool.
thing. And it's like you kind of think all these big ideas are going to be, continuous things. But they're almost gone just as soon as they appear.
Yeah, I took my vacation to die. Yay!
You're really spoiler heavy in this. Settle down.
No, seriously though, it sets it up with actually the way things are going with that though. No. Okay, I'll make it better. You said spoiler heavy. I was saying they said you basically are flying at the chance that you may be able to purge, but you also might get purged yourself. So basically, let's fly all the way from another country just so I might die.
You would think there'd be some kind of you'd think you'd have to be an American citizen to have to be able to participate in the purge.
I think so.
It's
Well, New Founding Fathers, such whacked out government. I don't know how that actually works.
I'm sure if they do another one,
I thought the purge was worldwide too. I thought they mentioned that in Anarchy, that there were different kinds of purges that they mentioned in the first movie. They showed some footage from other countries.
Yeah, then apparently the whole idea is America's insane. That's what the whole concept is. They play fucking America the Beautiful in every single trailer for all of these.
Exactly.
And it's always the American flag waving,
which is the last scene in the movie. But
the fucking poster. The poster.
Yes.
The title. When the titles come up, they're the fucking flag.
I love the concept of these movies. I just wish they were executed better. Pun not intended.
So yeah, that's just a whole lot of clusterfuckery.
It's not a horror movie.
They're getting more and more clusterfuckery as they go.
Yeah.
This is why I think just setting it up and making a home invasion movie is something I don't condemn it for. Because you do have, I don't know. It's complicated.
You need to follow more people and be a little bit more cohesive.
If there was somehow a combination of Anarchy in the first movie, I feel like that would have been... I'm not sure how you'd do that without being too bouncy, but...
they set that up right in the beginning here, but quickly they abandoned it.
So... That's pretty much all I want to say, right? Yeah, we'll leave it at that. Okay, our second movie is gonna be the BFG, which is Spielberg's new movie. That's supposed to my understanding, the whole thing they're kind of talking up is that this is basically him reuniting with his E.T. crew.
Oh yeah.
And we're going to have, it's going to basically him going back to those E.T. roots. And with, obviously the screenwriter, wrote E.T., who actually died back in November. So this is her last actual screenplay.
Right.
And there's a whole obviously reuniting with Mark Rylance after Bridge of Spies, which apparently they're just gonna do everything together now. I guess they're Scorsese and Leo now, or Ron Howard and Tom Hanks, and
that's fine.
Spielberg and Rylance is what it's gonna be now.
Not a problem with that.
Yeah. So, and it's with like a heavy heart that I feel about this movie the way I do, because there are so many damn criticisms about Spielberg now. Like, obviously, back in the day, Spielberg was the ultimate.
Well, of course.
Spielberg and the word director were synonymous. Anytime you wanted to be a director, you referred to as Spielberg. Anytime, any reference to movies whatsoever, Spielberg's name would come up.
Yeah. He
was just kind of the ultimate. And now, in this world we live in, when we're all growing up, I guess, it's popular to go, oh, his movies are so smothered in sentimentality. His movies need some raw stuff in them. His movies need to be gritty or some bullshit. I don't know.
No, they really don't.
I don't know. That to me, that's just like, it's like what Tarantino said about people complaining about the violence in his movies. His response to that was, do you go to Metallica concerts and tell them to turn the music down?
Exactly.
It's like, are you really going to go into a Spielberg movie and then you see happiness and joy and hopefulness and you're like, man, I wanted this movie to end with the end of the fucking world. I just wanted to watch everything burn at the end of this. This is so disappointing, Spielberg. I don't know what you're looking for.
I don't know what movies they've ever watched in their life.
Just go to your Facebook status and talk about how cynical and edgy you are, and that's pretty much the only place you're going to be heard, because nobody gives a fuck, really.
Have fun in your coffee
shops. Go ahead and do your thing where you're like, dudes, I want you all to see how cynical I am. God, Spielberg's a hack. But whatever.
Enjoy your cute.
But I do understand if people just don't much care for his movies.
Right.
There are beloved directors out there that I say pretty much everything they've done's a piece of shit.
Right. Same here.
It's fine. It's fine. If it's, as long as it's reasonable, obviously, and it's not just,
I like Spielberg.
Yeah, it's like,
that's it.
It's like, I wish his movies weren't so happy.
Don't go watch a Steven Spielberg movie then. Come on.
So yes, I have been very much on his side, even when I don't like his movies at all.
Same.
Which has happened recently with Warhorse.
Yes. That's a great example.
I get that he's not immune. It's okay. The issue, though, and the thing that kills me here is, not only did it seem like he was really trying to go back to when he was the fucking king of everything. Mm-hmm. But it was just a labor of love in general.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he so wanted to make this movie. That thing, the advertisement thing where he says this was, like, the greatest experience he ever had making something. Mm-hmm. And good God, for Spielberg to say that, this must have been a big deal. And, with the whole having the E.T. crew around and it being a book that the year E.T. came out, 82, was when this book was released, no? God. So, it very, like, you can say, oh, he's just plugging his movie or it's just advertising or whatever. I do probably believe him when he says, this is, like, the most satisfying experience he's had.
I believe that.
Like I said, though, which makes the end product all the more heartbreaking.
Yep.
Because he continues to not be immune after Warhorse. And let's not forget he made 1941, which is one of the worst movies ever. I know, okay? But here's the problem. There are plenty of things in here to like.
Yeah.
Much like the movie we just talked about.
Of course.
There are things in here that made me really want to like this. Mm-hmm. It's very, very... It really, really does capture that magic. It really does. That kind of Spielberg quality.
Polar Express comes to mind.
You can tell that's Zemeckis.
I know, but that's the kind of look I had watching the movie. It feels very Polar Express.
And you can tell just by looking at it that it's a Spielberg movie.
Oh yeah.
However, then there's some like I said, the visuals are kind of constant. Well, for the most part, are constantly great for the 2-hour runtime. Like that whole opening when he takes her to Giant Country, and there's the whole thing where it's like, well, how does a giant get around in this world?
That's awesome.
And then there's a really cool scene where he's just like finds ways to be incognito as he does. I mean, you think they'd feel that shit vibrating, but it doesn't matter.
The sequence is great.
Yeah. I do love that, and it's a great kind of whole opening to show you what all you're in for. And I guess we really can't go anywhere without talking about Rylance himself, doing the whole motion capture thing, where it's really like every little ounce of warmth that Mark Rylance has, which we know is a lot. I know The Gunman just came out where he played the villain. But for the most part, we know Rylance has so much warmth to him, especially when he was at the Oscars. He just oozes that this is such a comforting person. Just an all around pleasant human being in general, and that really really comes through in a great way with this performance. I don't know who else was thrown around, because I know he only just recently worked with Rylance on Bridge of Spies. And I imagine he's been planning this for a long time. I don't know if anybody else's name was in there, but I can't imagine anybody else, especially after seeing it, that could really... I mean, I could see people attempting it, but not in the way it should be. This is absolutely the way the part should have been played.
And he was cast in 2014, so obviously Spielberg knew something.
Yes, absolutely. And also the girl.
Yeah.
This is strange. This is like the Twilight Zone. We're on a surprisingly great kick of young actors and actresses. There's a lot of great ones coming out.
Oh, yeah.
That show a whole lot of promise, and she is one of them as well. I looked up her name, and I have forgotten it already.
Ruby Barnhill.
Yes.
She's really good in this.
And so all the pieces are here. Everything we need for this movie to work is here. However, we do come across some issues. Now, I do say that there is a lot of, it's an interesting line to walk as far as where your criticism lies in regards to what you were expecting from a movie and what the movie actually is.
Right.
Because a lot of the time, that's not the movie's fault, that's your fault. And you can't necessarily criticize the movie for being something that you didn't think it was. Because number one, you could just have a completely wrong idea. Number two, it's the marketing's fault. And the marketing and the movie are two totally separate entities. Just like the advertisements for Drive. Nobody blamed Refn for that.
Nope.
So, if that's the kind if you were one of the people pissed off by that, you didn't blame Refn for it, you blamed the marketing for it. Let me just say, now of course this is hard coming from me, who doesn't watch trailers, so hard to say what my point even is, but what I'm saying is, we had the concept, and I did not read the source material, which could also be a problem.
Neither did I.
I was going to, but you go to the online catalog, and it either says available or checked out until this date. I look up the BFG on the online catalog for this library. Status, missing.
Oh, man.
So I did not get to the source material. Sadly. But the thing is that you had Spielberg, and you have this concept, and you have this really, really magical place. I kind of thought we were in store for an adventure.
Oh, yeah.
We're not really in store for an adventure. Not a lot of adventure in this movie. The opening gives us that vibe. That whole trip to Giant Country. Wow. I love it. I love everything about that. And then we just kind of hit the brakes for a very long time. And the movie just kind of is what it is. And there's a lot of great stuff to look at. But there are a lot of problems. Okay, let me talk. This is actually quite a big deal. This was probably kind of the nail here, the final nail here, where it just kind of, we reach one problem, the rest of the movie is going to have a big problem because of this one right here that's front and center. Now, when you see the giant's face, it's pretty abundantly clear that it's Mark Rylance's face.
Yeah.
And you have this little girl, who is obviously a little girl in her entirety. And you have the two of them interacting. And I remember Spielberg saying that this was a big thing. That in 2016, we have the technology to release this movie where this giant and this girl can exist in one frame together. With the motion capture and Rylance and her and the real world and all that stuff. I don't know how well... And yes, he does really, really bring life to the giant, for sure. But there's one thing that kind of just stopped me dead right here. And that is, the whole movie stems from the relationship between this giant and this girl. The motion capture looks great. You can clearly see Rylance in there, but the combination of the two at the same time, really, what were we just talking about? Where I had this problem. Where it's, everything in Giant Country looks great. The giants look great. But the second you drop an actual Warcraft, it was Warcraft,
which is,
everything looks great. But the second you try to combine the computer animation with the real people, there is a clear distance here. It becomes very abundantly clear that giant is totally and completely animated. There is never that whole... I never once, like I said, I heard Spielberg say that, and he seemed very, very proud of the idea that we can have this giant and this girl in one frame together, and it comes to life. The story becomes to life. I never once saw that girl and the giant and thought those people are in the same world.
No.
There's a very, very clear, and it really puts a distance between those two characters that is so not supposed to be there. The whole that they are combined in the one world seamlessly is supposed to be the attraction. But oh my god, did I feel a distance between her and that world. Like I said, by itself, it looks fantastic, but you try to combine the two, there's definitely two different things going on there. It is very clear when she's on his table that she is on a set that just has giant things that would normally be normally sized.
Yep.
And that Mark Rylance is in front of some green screen doing what he needs to do. And it's that pretty much... Yeah, from that moment on, it was kind of like, I'm trying to be here. I'm really trying to be present for this. I really, really want to be here. But I just wasn't feeling it from then on. And then it turns into, after a while, it just kind of, for a while, it just feels directionless. For quite a long time. Even if you have really, really nice scenes in there, like when he goes through the water and it's like a whole upside down world, like the reflection is actually its own world or something. All this stuff is great as individual scenes, but tying them together as one movie, after a while it starts to feel kind of really tedious because we're not really... And then there's the plot. The plot basically is that he's bullied by other giants. I did kind of like that. When she sees those townspeople that are there before the giant comes, and they're just kind of hanging around drunkenly. Adam Godley's there with a few others, and those guys end up playing some of the giants in Giant Country that bully him. Because the second I saw, well, the only way I know this for sure, you might have to look it up, but I noticed for sure that Adam Godley was one of the giants, and I was like, oh, but that means all those other guys were too. Okay, And I will just go ahead and say that when Spielberg decided he was going to go back to his E.T. roots, supposedly, well, I'll get more into that in a second, about how E.T. is not the Spielberg movie this movie reminds me of. I wasn't expecting, to say the least, farting dogs and people getting hit in the balls.
So lame. I hate this.
And then some dude tried to scold me today when I was talking about this, because we saw the movie last night, about telling me that he was basically backing it up and saying, you can't get mad at the farting thing because it's in the source material. Hey, that's great. I mean, Roald Dahl did his thing, and we all love him for doing his thing. He made these stories that we will love forever. Even when we're dead and gone, people will still be loving his stories.
Of course.
That's all well and good, but the fact that it was in the book,
doesn't matter.
Okay, it's suddenly everything is okay. Suddenly, it's not completely. I just don't like it, dude.
I'm not a fan of this at all.
And there are some scenes though that are quite funny. I liked, who was it, Jermaine that was the main...
Oh, that was obvious the second it happened.
He comes in and because he gets bullied because regardless of him being this giant, all the other giants are actually a lot bigger than him.
Yeah.
And Jermaine Clement is like their leader or whatever. His face, I knew it wasn't him because of his voice, but every time I saw his face, I kept thinking John Bernthal.
These guys look like they were from Warcraft.
So he comes in, and he's this big hulking thing
right.
with this imposing voice, and he will just tear up anything, and he will destruct anything, he will eat anything. And he walks up to Rylance knowing, what he does. And this big hulking thing just comes forward and sticks his finger out and says, I got a boo-boo. And it's like, for the first, you hear that, and that's hilarious to you.
Yes, it is.
And then they did it again.
Yeah.
Which is like the cardinal sin of doing something funny. Well, that was nice while it lasted. There's quite a few things that they bring back multiple times. And if you have something that works, don't do that. I can't fucking believe I'm saying that. To a movie that has directed by Steven Spielberg written on its poster.
I don't know.
Okay, but anyway, speaking of him, going back to the E.T. thing, E.T. is not really the vibe I'm getting from this. Even though it is kind of its own thing, and where there's giants and all that stuff. If there's one Spielberg movie this was really giving me vibes of, let me see if you can guess what I'm going to say. What's the one Spielberg movie that I just could not stop thinking about through this movie? I'll give you one guess for time restraints. Go. He's blanked on me, so I'm going to tell you. Hook.
Interesting.
Because, well, for starters, I immediately got a Pan vibe, for starters, because our first scene, we fade in, it's an orphanage, labeled orphanage. And I just got a Pan vibe. And then it continued, and then we had the score. The score feels a lot like Hook's in a lot of scenes.
Who did the score for Hook?
Williams.
Yeah, guess what? He did this one too.
Of course. He and Spielberg kind of like, that's just what they do. That's them gallivanting. And then there are scenes when he's terrorized by flying balls of light that look an awful lot like another character from another movie.
Wow.
And there were a ton of things here just giving me Hook vibes. Like, so I can't even. There are more things that are skipping my mind now. But I remember saying for at least half the movie, this reminds me so much of Hook. And then there's the whole, and like I said, after a while they're just kind of doing stuff, just for stuff to be happening because there's no real cohesion of story here or anything. So they start doing the dreams thing, where it turns out that the reason the big friendly giant walks around at night while everybody's asleep is because he's actually the guys from Dark City.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Wow.
And yes, I know, Dark City was 1998, this book was 1982, but you get what I mean. And there's like the scene when we see the kids when they're watching the kid dream, and it's just like a silhouette on the wall. There's just something really storybook and magical about that, and it's really dreamlike too. Not just because the scene's about a dream, but there's stuff in this movie that is so incredible, and there's a movie just cannot hold up to it. There's not enough like to make a story go around. They're really, really pushing it for a 2-hour runtime, especially when we get to the Queen stuff. When Rebecca Hall suddenly appears, and Rafe Spall too. I didn't even know Rebecca Hall was in it. I was kind of like, this is a weird cameo, but it's a legit part. It just took her an hour and a half to show up. Same thing for Rafe Spall too. Yeah, there's even with the story, there should still be some level of excitement that's not here. There's certainly some wonder with the visuals and all that, but that can only hold up for so long before you really start to feel that outside of the visuals, there's not a whole lot to really happen here. So there's not really anything that's... Like I said, it should be the relationship between the girl and the giant, but just that contrasting real-life animation thing wasn't working for me. So this is actually getting a little depressing, because this should have been... It feels like it was like right on the cusp of just absolute greatness. But I just wasn't... No, my heart wasn't in it. Which sucks because Spielberg's clearly was. So it's not like you can just say that, you know, it was a director being lazy or just churning something out. That's what makes it even more disappointing. And this is something he really put his heart into. And there are definitely scenes where it shows. But as a whole movie, it's just not gelling. You know?
It just... Disappointment's probably the right word.
Alright. But... God bless Mark Rylance, and we hope we see that girl in a lot more
I'm
stuff.
sure we will.
Okay. Bill Hader, I think, was one of the Giants, too.
You are correct.
So good. Good for Bill Hader. We always want Bill Hader around, too.
We always want Jermaine around, too.
Yes. Alright, our last movie today is going to be Legend of Tarzan. Because in 2016, we were all craving a Tarzan movie, right? Because didn't they try one like a couple of years ago that was like animated or something? It was like this massive disaster.
Ashley said it's one of the worst movies he's ever seen in his life.
I saw like that poster for it, but I didn't even know anything had even come of it. Like I didn't even know if it fully existed or not.
It didn't exist in this country.
That makes sense. Okay. So immediately, I was a little thrown off. Not saying the movie's a problem. I'm just saying when the movie started, I was a bit thrown off. Because wasn't quite starting the way I assumed.
Mm-hmm.
We're taking more of the Greystoke approach, where he's kind of we're kind of in the after territory, where he has become Tarzan and then he's been Tarzan, and now we've come to this point where his Tarzan life is in the past. And we know this mainly because Samuel L. Jackson is like, you know, revving him up about the fact that he's Tarzan. And he actually, as if it's like this famous catchphrase now in the world of Tarzan, he's like trying to egg him on and say like, you know, this was you. And he actually says the line, you know, me Tarzan, you Jane, that was you. We have Alexander Skarsgård in this suit. Or it's kind of like at first I thought, is this... what was that? I've only seen a handful of the old Tarzan movies, but there was one, Tarzan's New York Adventure. That was the one where they brought him out of the jungle, they put him in a suit, and they tried to put him in the city. And it was hilarious. It's a really nice movie. That was when, Johnny Weissmuller was still doing them.
Okay.
Like the guy that's kind of like the quintessential.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
This was, and I was kind of actually getting a bit excited about this movie. Like, I know it seems like a financial and critical disaster to release a Tarzan movie in 2016 with an actor that's mainly known for TV. But regardless of David Yates' name being on it, the guy who gave us, he started with Potter at Order of the Phoenix, and then did the rest, and he's doing Fantastic Beasts also.
Really so.
So he's had a busy year with these two. But even so, but I was getting a little excited because I was like, if we're gonna do like the Johnny Weissmuller movies, I'm very excited to see what that looks like in 2016, especially with a director as like epic in scale as Yates is, prone to.
And the writing.
I feel like that we really could have had something here.
Yeah.
Especially, and with, it does seem... I love the guy, I really do. But, it's getting less and less exciting the more Waltz plays villains. Because
he's typecast.
We're very much getting to that point to where it's like, yeah, he's done that. And he's doing it now, and we love him. We really, really love him.
We really do.
We really, really do. But, he's done it. he's very much done it.
Give him something new to do.
And Samuel Jackson just being in it. Samuel Jackson being in anything automatically has my attention. We'll go into Margot Robbie in a second. And the thing here is that there seemed to be a lot of excitement here, but the trouble is we're kind of getting less of Johnny Weissmuller movie and more of Buster Crabbe or Glenn Morris or something. When they just started getting Olympic medalists to just start playing Tarzan.
Right.
And that's the thing with Skarsgård too, is it's like, when he was first cast, I was like, that's odd. But then it kind of turns into, when you really think about it, when you're looking at actors, Tarzan is a hard role to fuck up.
Right.
As long as you're built for it, you've pretty much got it. That's pretty much all you need to do.
That is agreed.
It's not a hard part to play. So, yeah, there wasn't too much concern going in. It was only when it kind of started to unravel and it kind of seemed like, okay, I kind of see where we're going here, and that's kind of, I don't know. It's very, very much been there, done that stuff with pretty much anything. Not just Walt's playing a villain, but this story. It feels very much like you would think there would be some kind of, with this epic portrayal of it, because the movie looks really good. In appearance, nice. There's such a recurring theme this week. It looks so good.
Oh, yeah.
Even the animals, you can tell the animals are clearly animated, but they still look pretty good. And this is all well and good. But this story is so... I know you don't need a really complicated story for a Tarzan movie. But this is like the plot of every low-tier Tarzan movie. There's ones, the post-Weissmuller period, where they were just kind of putting them out willy-nilly, and without a whole lot of care. This basically, make it black and white and tone down the effects by a lot. By that I mean take out all the CGI. And you got those Tarzan movies, they churn out at an hour and 10 minutes each that would just come and go.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not good.
Nope.
And then we have Margot Robbie, who of course I love.
We all do.
Yeah. She's really good. Not just because it seems like it'd be physically impossible to be that attractive. Her beauty just seems like something from a whole other planet. But disregarding that completely, she can be a really good actress too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I say that as if it's some surprise. She can't be a good actress when she looks like that. That's just not common. No, she could be a really good actress too, and she's got plenty of performances coming up. I'm very much looking forward to.
Oh yeah. We'll get to that later this weekend.
I don't know. She was kind of a weird choice for Jane. That wasn't really clicking with me. Like kind of rich Jane. Probably, sure.
When you hear the casting choices, you're gonna kick yourself.
Clearly obviously, her breakout role, it's very clear we can imagine her as a very, very rich woman. But as Tarzan's Jane, though, I just wasn't very convinced.
You would have been fighting with your heart all three choices here, because Margot Robbie obviously got it.
Mm-hmm.
Jessica Chastain was in the running, and so was Emma Stone.
I could kind of see Chastain. Yeah.
Lucy Hale,
I remember
Emma Watson, Gabriella Wilde.
I actually remember when Chastain was like legit in this,
Mm-hmm.
and then she had to be replaced. I remember that now.
That's correct, 2013.
Yeah. But I don't know. I don't know. And then we have Waltz, where in his first scene, there's a lot. Obviously, we were talking about this. There's a lot of other movies in this movie. We could feel.
Oh yeah.
You missed the opening scene, but our first shot of Waltz is him walking, and I swear to God, it's like he walked right through the set of Gladiator. And I did not, when I said that in my head and I wrote it down here, I did not know that in this very scene he was about to run into Giant Houndstooth. I had no idea.
This is true.
But he does the thing where he brushes his hand through like the fucking plants, and it's very, very much a Gladiator scene for Waltz in his Jack Black and King Kong getup. And yes, there is so much of Peter Jackson's King Kong here, which is a compliment, because it's kind of hard when you're going for making your movie look epic and just fantastical. Peter Jackson seems like a high reach.
Oh yeah.
to just look like Peter Jackson's King Kong, you're doing pretty well for yourself.
Oh yeah.
So I didn't really have a problem with that, but then there are times where the CG is a bit overdone. Like when they did, like there's a scene where Samuel Jackson's monologuing, and there's like this army of green bugs walking single file down the tree.
Right.
And it's like, I appreciate the attention to detail, but number one, that doesn't look real, and number two, that is completely unnecessary. Because I was like, are they going to start crawling on him? Are they going to have some significance?
No, they're just there.
They're just passing through.
Yep.
Just don't mind us, guys. We're just here to show off the CGI, okay? Just leave us alone. And yes, going back to Waltz, actually, because I kind of just strayed off him by accident. Here's the problem, too. There are so many things I'm saying about Christoph Waltz in this review I cannot believe I'm saying about Christoph Waltz. But when you look at it, not just, kind of just for the movie in general, also, just as a standalone, but also when you look back at the other older Tarzan movies, the precedent. Even when you look at the animated one, the Disney one, and that straight-to-video sequel they did, that was like an anthology thing, Tarzan and Jane. Did anybody see that? You're here for those scenes in the original movies when it's Tarzan and Jane just in the jungle, just doing their thing. You know, back when the MPAA wasn't a thing and they could explore that. But I just mean when they're just, doing the whole thing in the jungle. That's kind of what the whole thing, just Tarzan and Jane being Tarzan and Jane is kind of what we're always here for. And the story, even though I was giving it shit for being simple, the story is always kind of on the back burner, because that's not really what the Tarzan movies are about. There's really no reason for them to be. They're just kind of... Plot points are basically a MacGuffin to get things going. So we can get to the Tarzan shit. That's the idea. But I think, as far as Walt's character here, there's way too much of him. We see that guy way too often. They're really, really heavy on showing us all the other people that aren't Tarzan. Which is not really why we come to a Tarzan movie. I mean, it's crazy. Like, if you're on the outside looking in, if you've never really seen a Tarzan movie, maybe outside of the Disney movie, you're probably thinking, what does it matter how much we focus on Tarzan? There is no way that character can be that interesting. Weirdly enough, he's kind of all you want to see in these movies, because he's actually that interesting of a character, regardless of the fact that normally he can barely speak English and just hangs out with animals and does his thing. But there's a reason the dude has like 50 movies to his name. Because he's a really great character, and we love just seeing him in his element, doing his thing in the jungle. And this movie only wants to be about 1/3 that, if that. That might be generous.
Yeah.
And you go back at those older Tarzan movies, those throwaway ones, and you see what their biggest problem was the fact that they didn't focus on Tarzan enough. Like, once Johnny Weissmuller was out, they barely focused on him in the movies. They were just like, hey, here's this plot, and here's our villains, and here's, you know, whatever, his new love interest, or whatever. And they just didn't really, they just kind of threw the character away, and really did not use what they had. And that's kind of the sense I was getting they were doing here after a while. And you would think that, like, I mean, I get that they're trying to do, like, obviously it's 2016. You can't bring back a classic character without doing the gritty thing, because that's what fans want. So if you're going to bring Tarzan back, you got to be real gritty and violent and dark and all that. And the movie does try that, but the weird thing is it seems like they're also kind of going for the traditional feel as well. And these things aren't really meshing very well. Like, I get it. I feel like there could have absolutely been, just from looking at the final product, you can tell that there's clearly a middle ground they could have found. But they didn't, really. And it would have probably been, it would have been a lot more fun as a traditional story, given what we've got. And it's, yeah, just it trying to be both. I don't know. And yes, and like I said, they do kind of throw stuff in there where I'm not really sure what even they're getting at. Like when, obviously it's going to be a big moment. It's going to be this huge, huge moment in this movie when we hear him do his Tarzan yell, right?
Right.
So we hear it, and it's not quite it's not quite the traditional thing. It's not like what they did with Godzilla. When Godzilla roars in the 2014 movie, and it's that thing where he roars and then it kind of dies down into that guttural sound. It was exactly how we remembered it. With Tarzan, obviously it's a little different, but then we have Waltz there to actually say, that sounded different than I thought it would. It's like, what exactly does him saying that mean? Are they getting at something? Is it just simply his character saying something weird? Or is it the whole, yes, we changed the yell and we know we did, even though they didn't really that much? I don't know. Also on the topic, you know who Waltz was reminding me a lot of in certain scenes? One scene in particular, but you know who Waltz was really giving me vibes of? Christopher Walken in The Rundown.
Interesting.
Especially, like that. Remember the scene in The Rundown when he tragically kills Ernie Reyes Jr.? Mm. That scene's in this movie. Ernie Reyes Jr. is not in this movie, but that character he played in The Rundown might as well be. Oh, God. Okay, so, you know, I do like that he's a threatening villain, too, because when we get that opening scene, it turns out he's not just like, you know, I'm just the rich guy that's gonna, you know, everybody will fight around me and I'll just be in my castle or whatever, or my really nice yacht or whatever. He comes off as a bit of a fighter, and that whole strangling people with his beads thing.
Right.
You know, he's a decent villain. We just got way too much of him, I think, in big doses. When that's kind of not really why the movie's called The Legend of Tarzan. I can't even think off the top of my head what Waltz's name was. I think it was Leon something. But the movie is called The Legend of Tarzan for a reason. Like I said, given, like if you're a fan of Greystoke with, I think it was Christopher Lambert that played him, which that movie is called, oh my god, it's such a long, Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, Lord of the Apes. And I think it's the full title. It was from 1984. So The Legend of Tarzan, they took the title of that movie and put it in this movie, and kind of took that same approach. So maybe that, if you're into that, that's more what you're looking for, but, yeah, once again, I just feel like there's a lot of stuff here. Like, I feel like the ingredients were here, but this is the year of just falling short, apparently.
Sounds like it.
It's certainly the week of, but, the year hasn't been, you know, like, this will be Finding Dory's, how many weeks in a row now, number 1, 3?
Next week it'll be 4. Well, no, next week it actually has real competition.
What is next week?
Secret Life of Pets.
And?
Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates.
Alright.
That'll be a fun week. So before we end, since I think that means we're done.
Yeah, it got real quiet.
Star mounts, since I forgot last week, but it does say in the description bar. The Purge election year.
A generous 2. That's real generous. It's for the ideas and how they are able to expand. It's just,
The BFG.
2.
Legend of Tarzan.
2.
Wow. That's an easy week. The movies we just talked about a second ago, that's going to be your video next week, and probably...
Wait a minute. What is the average?
I don't... 2. 2. I was hoping that wasn't a trick question, because Owen can't do math. You know that. It's in the title. But, so tomorrow, we did our worst of the half-year video. Our best of the half-year video is coming tomorrow. And our most anticipated is the week after. Versus this week, your cryptic comment is Home Invasion, so stay tuned for that. Gaming with Ash on Monday. The Raw Podcast at 11:30 p.m. on Monday night. And Wednesday Wrestling Podcast is going to be 9:30 p.m., so get ready for that. Sip and Snack Random Flavors on Thursday, and Sip and Snack Original on Saturday. So yeah, you're also getting a Sip and Snack tomorrow too. So a Sip and Snack and also the best of the first half of this year. That's coming tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. Halloween Horror Nights news most likely coming next week, and that'll include a podcast. So more information later on. Zazzle.com for your Podcast Network merchandise. It's Podcast Network there. Facebook fan page, Podcast Network, at Podcast Network on Twitter. And that's all we've got for today. And AJ, any parting words?
That's it.